Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Christine Wolf, and welcome today to our student-led virtual internships panel. We're so excited to have you join us. We've got a lot of interesting stories to share with you today, but before we get started, I just want to share a few housekeeping ideas for us to think about. First of all, it'd be great if you're not speaking, if you can keep your microphone off, just so we can cut down on any background noises that would be distracting. And we're also recording this presentation. So if that's something that you would prefer not to be a part of, you can feel free to log off now and be assured that this presentation will be available to you as a recording later on. And we'll send out that link to all of the participants and people who registered. I would like my fellow hosts to introduce themselves now. Perhaps Rachel, you could begin.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Rachel Hegland, and I am the Academic Department Associate and Internship Coordinator at the Department of African and African Diaspora Studies, and I've been here for about 4 years.
Great.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Aimee Orndorf, and I'm the Assistant Director at the Center for Latin American and Caribbean Studies. And I'm happy to introduce our first panelist, Emily Crain-Castle. Emily is an alumna of the International Studies program and is currently enrolled in the Masters of Sustainable Peacebuilding program. She's going to be talking about her experiences doing a virtual internship. So I'm happy to have Emily present.
Thank you. I'm trying, do I have access to share screen? Yes, I do. Okay, cool. Hopefully you can't see my notes because I'm trying something new. So let me know if it looks a little chaotic.
We can see it.
Okay, cool, amazing. Thank you for allowing me to be in this space. I just wanted to say that. And I'm always here. I have to speed to class after this. So if y'all have any questions and I thought I can't answer right after, feel free to email me. I have that towards the end of this presentation. So my project that I did, well, my internship that I did last summer, I have no sense of time, so it doesn't even feel like it was last summer. I worked with a coffee farm located in Colombia. Tell me if I'm wrong. Nario. I think it's how you say it. I could totally be wrong. It's Narino, Colombia. It was with a coffee farm named Asaprof Cafe. And I was I'm really interested in like the world of capitalism and how to dismantle it and help small businesses really get out of that like system and try to deliver an ethical product. And like, what does ethics even mean? That's what really interests me. So I wanted to facilitate the creation of an ethical framework for coffee importing to Milwaukee from Asaprof Cafe. I learned about this opportunity through a friend of mine. She was my my professor TA for my peace studies course my junior year, and she really knew that I was interested in the coffee industry. I have several years of coffee experience, and I really wanted to understand more of the international scope to this work. I wanted to hear from the farmers and really engage with them and get in more of an understanding of what they wanted to see in this system and what they wanted to see change. So yeah, so I was really interested in how just ethical and value-driven products and processes develop. And it's just so difficult to comprehend what ethics even is in a white capitalist system. And so I was really interested in bringing a value-based product into a market, and it driven by efficiency and money just interests me because this company was, well, the farm was a very just empathetic individual, and they really they did all of their labor for free. So they were dealing with a lot of compensation difficulties there, and just the uprisings in Colombia during last summer and COVID really impacting the supply chain. So I will get into kind of what I did. Oh God, sorry, my bad. Oh, my computer. There we go. project summary and context. So I kind of had 3 different phases that I got into. So I really wanted to understand, what does a value-based coffee mean to Asaprof Cafe? Or what does a value-based business really look like? And what does that mean to them? Because we all have those different values. And then the second phase of that work, I really wanted to understand the current landscape of value-based products. And what does that mean? What does that look like in co-ops, into different sectors, whether that be beer, clothing, coffee, food. There's a different lens to every single different product there is in our world. So I wanted to get more understanding there and seeing if there was really a market for that. And then the third phase of this was really scoping out the challenges and obstacles to implement an ethical framework. So I did that through a lot of stakeholder interviews. So that looks like baristas, coffee buyers, coffee customers, roasters, coffee business owners. So I got a really good lay of the land in Milwaukee, and I chose Milwaukee because I'm first located here, and they were really interested in getting to learn a little bit more about our city and seeing what their business would look like in the US. They didn't have a product in the US before. And so they kind of wanted to get more of an understanding of how Milwaukee fit into that transition for them. And yeah, so it's kind of my responsibility. I did a lot of research. I did annotated bibliography, interviews with internal and external stakeholders. I really wanted to do interviews with more of the internal piece. However, just because of the COVID component, I knew that I couldn't do that as much as I wanted to. I couldn't sit with the farmers and really engage with them and understand what they really wanted and what was at stake for them in this process. But I'm hoping to redevelop that in the future and pursue that in other ways. Oh, wow, I just went back. I'm sorry. Yeah, so throughout this process, I was really resilient. I kind of wanted to describe a little bit more of like the negative, not negative, but the positive and the struggle that I faced in this process. So of course, the language barrier, our meetings were 2 hours long. I am not a fluent Spanish speaker, sadly, but I did have a few words underneath my belt. So I understood some of the context there. And just like external and internal stressors of just really making sure, if you're going into this process in the future of doing a virtual internship, remembering that like life can get in the way and that we're all human beings, and just making sure that you're prioritizing yourself throughout that journey. And just the piece of learning from folks that like share a different language than me, different language and a different culture, was probably the biggest takeaway for me. I think that is a skill set in itself, isn't really learning how to engage with someone that is different and has a different view of who I am and my culture, just because I come from America. So it was, I felt a sense of them prioritizing me and my needs instead of it the other way around, and me really learning a lot from them. And they said that like they were learning a lot from me, which of course that happens. But just like glorifying like the American education system. And I was trying to stay away from that. So just like learning kind of how that shows up in these different engagements, especially with like an international focus. Yeah, and so throughout this process, I really learned just like trusting myself and really trying to go outside the box, because this was something that I was new to me and new to the program. We didn't really work. We didn't have a partner in Colombia. And so I had to go outside of the program to really develop this internship, and learning in new spaces. I learned a lot from a partner and more of the engagement itself, let alone like the project. I learned more from our interpersonal engagements instead of the actual project, which was just like an amazing piece to it. So it's really informing me now and how I interact with others that are different than me, and kind of it made me think about what I want to do in the future with my work. And I'm a Texas native, and I was really I've always been interested in Spanish and just redeveloping kind of where I come from and those roots. And so just like having that partnership with a country like, well, someone in Colombia really harnessed that for me and brought me back to a place that reminds me of home and made me want to redevelop that in the future in different ways. So yeah, that's kind of what I did. Sorry for rambling. If you have any questions, I don't know if that's time for now or later, but my email is there if anything comes up. Oh, sorry. Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
Christine, you're on mute.
Thank you. Sorry, see, overzealous with the mute. Thanks so much, Emily. I just wanted to say that if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. And then we will address all those questions later at the end after all of our presenters have had a chance. So it's with great pleasure as the Assistant Director of Global and International Studies that I present to you a current Global Studies major, Grace Ingham, who is going to talk today about an internship that she recently completed as a degree requirement for the Global Studies program. So take it away, Grace.
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. Like Christine mentioned, I'm currently a student in the Global Studies program. I am a senior this year, and I chose the sustainability track with a Spanish minor. And I was fortunate enough to stumble upon my internship opportunity through the Summer Virtual Internship Scholarship Competition, which I'm unsure if that is going to be offered going forward, but if it is, I very, very highly recommend setting aside some time to work on an application for that, because not only did it help with the financial expenses, but it helped me find a really great provider, which kind of helped alleviate some of the stress of finding a placement and help me focus more on the work that I was doing. So I actually have a little bit of a video that I completed as part of the summer internship class, and that's kind of the credits that you get as the degree requirement. So if possible, Aimee, if you'd be able to play that for everybody, and then I can just speak a little bit to it afterwards as well. Yeah, so it's just kind of a cute 2-minute little snapshot of what I completed, and to kind of give a little bit more detail on that. I was able to, or my provider was Evolve Abroad, and they spoke with me beforehand on what kind of career I would like to have, kind of what I would like to improve upon. And one of the things I said was like networking, and I want to work in sustainability because it's my track. So that was when they set me up with a Two Oceans Aquarium in Cape Town, South Africa. And they expressed to me that there are 2 different projects they wanted me to work on. So the first of which was a Marine Month campaign for a lot of the local schools in South Africa, because a lot of these kids live relatively close to the ocean and haven't gotten a chance to learn about it yet. So I not only helped come up with like curriculum, but different projects that were appropriate for all these different age groups and things like that. And then just making it user intuitive, because some teachers in South Africa, their English might not be the best. So just making it really accessible for different teachers there as well. And the second of which was making a social media marketing campaign for their Marine Month, was kind of the banner title for that. And just taking a whole bunch of different nonprofit campaigns that they had, whether it was restoring reefs or saving sea turtles and things like that. And then just making posts for Facebook and Instagram and things like that. So for me, I ran into some of the same obstacles that Emily had shared before, but a few additional ones would be the time zones. A lot of times I'd be having meetings pretty early in the morning when it would be evening for some of my cohorts in like Russia and things like that. So working around time zones was definitely a little bit of a shift, but also really exciting because I got to, again, meet peers from all over the world. It was also communicating over virtual space as well, because we'd only touch base about once a week over Zoom calls because of that time zone difference. So just learning kind of what it means to be working in a professional space virtually and making sure that I was communicating not only with my provider, but with the organization I was working with as well. And it also kind of pointed out that I really liked working on design. It kind of combined sustainability and marketing. And I determined that I might actually want to look into developing that a little bit more, or doing something like that for my career as well. So it was a really, really great experience. And I'm more than happy to take any questions that anybody might have as well.
Thank you so much, Grace. I just love your video.
Thank you. I had a lot of fun making it. That was one of the programs that I kind of taught myself, was Canva. So would recommend. It's one of my favorites. I love it.
Beautiful job with that.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Grace. Canva is fantastic. Yeah, I recommend that as well to anybody. And I just updated to the pro and it's been a game changer. I'd recommend it. Yeah. All right. And so next I have the distinct pleasure of introducing our third and final guest speaker, Sophia Wood. And Sophia conducted an AADS internship, or African and African Diaspora Studies internship, in spring 2021. They are a CES, or Comparative Ethnic Studies major, and AADS minor. Her internship focused on research for a local group in Milwaukee that was in the process of establishing a workers co-op for refugee entrepreneurs. So it was a very neat experience, and I look forward to hearing more. And then she has actually since graduated from UWM, and they now work in Chicago with Safar Shaw LLP, and as a case assistant. So welcome, Sophia, and thank you.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Okay, so thank you, Rachel, for the introduction. I will start with a little bit, I guess, of like what my internship was and how I got into it. So I graduated this past summer. The internship was for the spring 2021 semester. And I'm an ethnic studies major. My advisor for that program, Dr. Rachel Buff, actually recommended this internship opportunity to me, as the person who mentored me is actually a friend of hers. And that is Kai Gardner-Mishlove, who had kind of gotten her start in this area through this program she started a few years ago called Tables Across Borders. So she would network with refugee chefs in Milwaukee, and they would put on events where they would cook food and fundraise and community network and raise awareness for the different like businesses that they were bringing together in that space. So it was community organizing kind of like within specific industries. And that was something that became a great success for her. And she decided to pursue as more of a business model. So when I talked to her in probably late January, she wanted to basically create a business plan for developing her own cooperative. So my internship was pretty open-ended, and it was basically just to do the research and present kind of like a business plan report for her at the end of the semester that would kind of detail the resources she would need in order to do that, and kind of what steps she would take kind of before and after approaching a lawyer, and just kind of the basics of starting a business, and more specifically a co-op in Wisconsin. So I'm gonna share my screen here. So this is Kai. This is an image of her at the Tables Across Borders events. And so that was kind of like my introduction to her work and what she does. And then basically what I found, like through my research, I looked at what resources were already available for someone looking to do this in Milwaukee, in Wisconsin, or nationally. So one of the more helpful resources that I got into was based in UW-Madison that detailed kind of all of the different cooperatives that are in Wisconsin. Because as the nature of cooperatives, community networking and resources are important. So knowing kind of like what cooperatives already exist and the options that you have to work with them or get advice from them was important to Kai in this process. So that was something that for anyone looking to do that, they have kind of like a legal advice center in Madison, and like a lot of different documents from like state law and advice, and kind of like historically they've been operating since the late 70s, I think. So that was a good place to start for my research, and also for someone who's actively doing this. The other like main resource that I looked at in my research was Kiva Loans. So Kiva Loans are a way for people to fundraise for a project or a business kind of without going through traditional systems of financing or credit. So it's similar, I guess, to the setup of like a GoFundMe, but it is a loan. So pretty much anyone can apply to be a borrower. And at the time that I was doing the research, the way this works is that you kind of, instead of having anything like a credit check or cosigner, you have like community cosigners. So you would have like 10 to 25 of your local community members donate first to your campaign. And once you kind of complete that within about a month period, your campaign is able to go live for people all around the world to donate to. And then you have a certain amount of time to pay back that loan. But it's nice because it removes some of the traditional barriers for marginalized people in funding businesses or projects or community developments. And it creates more equitable platform for these things as well, because if you go on the website, you can filter it by categories, and it's more of an equal platform for people to get their message out. So that was kind of the basis of my research. And I can show you the report that I did as well. But basically, I distilled kind of like everything that I'd spent looking at into a format that Kai could share with the refugees that she was working with in Milwaukee or potential investors, to kind of look at what they would need to know and what would they need to bring to the table before they can start this process. So basically, starting with the state law, it breaks down into a couple different categories. of what the cooperative could be. So for her, I had recommended the worker co-op framework, but there is different like arrangements depending on who the typical members are, whether it's businesses or people, and kind of like what stakeholders you have involved in the process. And pretty much the most important determination is between independent contractors and employees, just because that kind of determines the amount of autonomy that someone has like within that system. And it's interesting because in the context of
I figured I'd answer your question, Christine, over voice, if that's okay. It's one piece of advice. I would definitely say try something new and go out of your comfort zone. And definitely push yourself to question what identities are showing up in your internship once you're actually in it, and how that is affecting like the process. I think that's a key part to it. And yeah, I would recommend everyone to be very self-critical throughout that process, and not being afraid of any cultural or intellectual humility in that process as well.
Wow. Thank you so much for that. That's really important to think about, particularly the cultural humility part, and just showing up present and always being open.
Of course.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
It looks like we have Sophia back with us. Ah, here she is. Wonderful.
ooh, okay. I'm so sorry about that. My computer just turned 6 and had a bit of a dramatic tantrum. But we're back and I'm connected to the Ethernet now. But basically, to summarize, reflecting back on my internship, I was interested in this particular one because it looked at how we can navigate within the systems of financial barriers and community organizing, while trying to dismantle the white supremacy and the different systems that branch off of that and have created these barriers in the first place. So currently I'm a case assistant at a labor and employment law firm. And a lot of the work that I have worked on recently kind of looks at misclassification between independent contractors and regular employees, and what those things mean for people in terms of getting the autonomy and resources that they deserve within a system that is kind of built to neglect that. So that was something that definitely like helped position my mindset when I was looking for a job upon graduating, and the things that I was interested in doing work-wise following that. So right now it's been a great place to start, and I'm not sure where it's going to go from here, but it's definitely helped kind of investigate the relationships that I have with those systems and community organizing and cooperatives. And it shows like kind of a great first step that you can take within your community to provide those resources, because sometimes like that whole process can feel very overwhelming. So I would say since January, it has definitely shown me kind of like the tangible things that we can do, which sometimes gets a little bit lost in academia when it's all very theoretical and systemic. So that, I guess, pretty much sums up my internship and reflection process.
Thank you so much. We're so happy that you were able to come back on and finish your thoughts. We really appreciate what you had to say today, and it was really very interesting, I'm sure, for everyone to hear all about So one of the questions that we asked Emily before she had to go to a class and has left is to share, some advice that you would have as a student who's gone through this process of finding an internship and actually doing the internship. And what's at the back end of the internship, and just thinking about the whole process, what's a piece of advice you might offer to students listening to this?
Sure. So one of the things that I knew going into it is that I do really like independent led processes. And that was kind of the point I was at in my degree as well with research. So I knew it would be a good fit for me to kind of be in this program where it's like, you figure out the best like research path to take, you figure out the best way to present it, and like you kind of decide what's going to be the most helpful. But I could see how like that might be a little bit challenging or not sustainable for people who like learn in a different way or don't feel comfortable taking the same approach. And I know that like when you're looking for internships, there's a lot of pressure as to kind of like what fits into your like academic narrative, what are you interested in, like what does your schedule allow for. So I would say like prioritize kind of like your needs as a person and a student first, and put yourself in an environment where you feel like you can learn something and you can make a difference with the resources that you have as yourself. So I would say like looking back, I'm glad it worked out the way it did. Just because like some of the other things that like I had thought about looking back in the semester, I was like, wow, it would have been a lot if there was something I had to submit like a weekly report or like repetitive deadlines. Like it just kind of would have added a lot to my school stress. So I would say like kind of like evaluate those values like when you're looking at internship opportunities.
Thank you. Grace, how about you? What's some advice that you might have for a student based on your experience with your internship this year?
Yeah, so for me, this is something I also wanted to speak about a little bit. Through my provider, they had a really interesting opportunity where I got to have weekly discussions with my peers who were, again, from the same provider, but they were all on different projects. And so what kind of came along with that was networking and making sure that you were talking to people and making connections, even if it's not necessarily the higher ups from the organization that you're working for, but even just my cohorts, and kind of learning about people who are like similar degree tracks, kind of what they were studying and what their next steps were, and just taking every opportunity that I could to learn from everybody that was involved, and then just keeping in touch with everybody as well, which is kind of an advantage of the virtual internship, is that's how you kind of establish those relationships and that's how you can maintain them as well. So like I was recently offered a position through my provider that I am unfortunately unable to do because it's 6 months in London and 6 months in Cape Town, South Africa, and I still have to graduate before I could take off over there. But to just keep in touch with everybody and keep talking to people, even when we all might all still be social distancing, to kind of keep networking.
Great, thank you. That's so amazing that you were offered that position. And, who knows, maybe in the future, right? There'll be the right time and the right opportunity, right? We'll come together. So, keeping up with those connections, right, is really important because you never know. So absolutely. I'm super happy to hear that.
Yeah, I was very fortunate to receive the offer, and I wish the timing would have worked out a little bit better, but it's encouraging nonetheless.
Absolutely, yes. So, what other questions do we have from the audience? Just feel free to unmute yourself.
I do have a question for both of our guest speakers. I wanted to ask you guys, with you guys having virtual internship, what would you say were the most challenging aspect of it being virtual? And do you think, how would it have been different had you been in person? If you could speak a little bit about to that, that'd be great.
Sure. So,
Oh, go ahead.
okay. So something that, or my internship, I should say, had a format of being stretched over the course of the whole summer. So was about 3 months that I was working with the organization. And when I was given these two larger projects, there weren't necessarily like weekly check-ins or deadlines that I had. So essentially what it was self-delegating into my own schedule when I could set aside like 5-6 hours at a time to just keep cranking out these projects. And kind of on the other side of that coin is just making sure that I am asking the right questions and keeping up with it, because if you're there in person, then you have people that are kind of checking in on you and you can ask questions in real time and things like that. But just making sure that you're really staying focused and you're not, procrastinating, so to say. Just because you're physically removed from that space means you still have to like mentally stay focused on it and stay engaged with the program.
Yeah, I actually enjoyed the virtual format. I have been taking probably about 80% of my courses from home for a few years before the pandemic, so it wasn't too much of a shift for me. But one thing that would have been, I think, really important to the process if we had been able to be in person was meeting some of the people that Kai has worked with in the past or like wanted to include in her potential cooperative plan to kind of get their take on what like they saw as important to the process or like questions or expectations they had, because it was definitely like a little bit removed from the community aspect, just communicating with Kai and doing kind of like the research secondhand. But other than that, like I thought it was pretty well suited to a virtual format.
Thank you so much. Any other questions?
I do have another question. I wanted to ask you guys, from your experiences, what do you think was your most significant accomplishment while you were working? It could be something about like your personal growth as a professional, or, something that occurred within your position.
I would have to say, like, during the period of the internship, it would probably just kind of be like putting my organizational and communication skills to the test. That was something that, like, because I kind of created the schedule for myself, and I was also doing my last few classes of my degree that I kind of had to like evaluate the time and resources spent for each thing, and that's something that's been really helpful for me in my current position, which is also pretty independent and mostly remote. So I think that really helped me like make that transition from school to independent work.
Yeah, I think Sophia raises a really good point with that as well. That kind of the virtual format also helps with that, kind of the self-reliance in a professional sense of not necessarily having an internship where it's like, okay, I need you to like finish this spreadsheet or do all these smaller tasks. It's more, we have these two larger end goals that you can kind of have the creative liberty to decide how you want to get there. And that also meant I could pick out like which programs I wanted to learn how to use and kind of explore in that sense as well, that I not only was teaching myself how to use these programs, but self-determining how I wanted to achieve that task and be proud of the work that I presented in the end.
Yeah, thank you for that, Grace. I think there were lots of really interesting opportunities for growth in the virtual space that, many of us didn't anticipate, right, when everything shifted because of the pandemic. And it really did create some, interesting ways for, interns in particular to really make a mark on the organizations in which they worked, because everyone was struggling. Everybody was trying to figure out how to operate in a new way. And so, it really did become a team effort, I think, in a really profound way in the last couple of years. And so the role of interns, I think, from what I was hearing on my end of things as an administrator, just were so valuable, and their contributions so appreciated. So it's interesting how, a situation that we find ourselves in that we could think about as being perhaps very negative initially, often, gifts reveal themselves to us as we go along, and we learn how to work with that new normal. So thanks for sharing that. Any other questions?
I have a quick question. So, hi everyone, my name is Elise. I work in the Center for Community-Based Learning, Leadership, and Research, long-winded title, the Siebler office at UWM. We help engage with the community at UWM and I guess offer experiential learning opportunities. And I run an internship program in our office. So kudos to both of you. You did a great job with your presentations. It was really great to hear about your experiences. I do have a question, and this might be for the two of you or the other coordinators of the program, but I know that this program, it's a credit-bearing internship. So I'm just curious to hear about how that works with, how it worked with your internship position. Was there kind of a reflection portion to the internship that's incorporated with it, and how exactly that structure looks?
Absolutely. So if I may, I'll step in and answer that a little bit, just because my internship was credit bearing. That I enrolled in a 3-credit course. The course is specifically constructed for internship participants, so with that in mind. And it added, I don't want to say it was necessarily additional projects, but it was more of like guidance to make sure that I was kind of jotting down what I was learning as I went, and had a lot of really valuable resources by the time I was done. So there was like a weekly reflection that we could just kind of write just like a short page or two kind of about how the week went, what we had learned, skills we had developed, things like that. And then towards the end of the project, we had things like the video that I shared with everybody, something like that. We had a digital storytelling project of how we landed our internship. And then we compiled a internship portfolio, which was super, super, super valuable. It included, like, we had to ask for a letter of recommendation from our program directors. We put a review from our program directors in there. We put samples of our work, overviews of the organization, our reflection essay at the end. So now I have this really awesome document that I can pull different pieces from and use to engage with employers and network within the field and things like that. So it wasn't necessarily a lot of extra busy work or anything like that. It was more just elevating my experience to be even more useful after the fact.
Yeah, I would have to pretty much agree with that assessment. I did kind of just a longer reflection towards the end of the project, but it definitely helped me distill some of those ideas about, communication and organization and self-management, and how those came through the process, and how I can put those to work in my career. I think there was like a couple of questions structured around that, and it was definitely helpful in kind of seeing what I had gained from the program.
Great, thank you both, and great job.
At least I can also say too that I'm the instructor of Global 489, the internship course for the global studies students. And Grace did a really nice job giving you the overview. I'm happy to share that syllabus with you if you're interested in seeing it. Just feel free to email me at cawolf@uwm. And I teach it from a leadership lens. So I look at 2 leadership theories, and then the students throughout the time in their internship are doing readings and some exercises around these particular leadership theories, and kind of, juxtaposing them, and then, thinking about, how leadership is unfolding in their organization, how they're developing their leadership skills, and what that means for them as young professionals. So that's where it's coming from.
Great, thank you, Christine.
Yeah, you're welcome. Do we have any other questions?
I just want to add too, with regards to AADS. So it's a little set up differently than global studies and international studies because Christine, as she noted, is the single instructor. So whereas in AADS, we assign a faculty advisor depending on what your research is. So for Sophia, hers was largely economically based. So we assigned Dr. Kopkin, who is our economics expert in our department. And so it can vary based on which professor you have. I believe with Dr. Kopkin, he had assigned readings. Whereas with in the past, sometimes professors will ask you just to post a weekly blog and then, a final summary. So if you are interested in AADS as well, I just want to provide you a little overview of how we structure it.
Also, just to add to that too, the Latin American, Caribbean, US Latinx Studies major called LACUSL also offers internships. It's set up similarly to AADS in the fact that students are paired with a faculty supervisor. So if you're interning at a law firm, for instance, you might have a faculty professor that's in political science, and the assignments would vary depending on your faculty supervisor and your internship site. So you might be doing papers or reflections. And it's also for credit too. So that's what's really nice about all three of our programs too, is you're not only getting that on site, whether it's in person or virtual experience, but you're also getting academic experience and working towards graduation, working towards getting credit towards your program too. And again, I just want to thank Sophia, Grace, and Emily too for sharing their experiences. It's super helpful and it's really incredible everything that you've accomplished and everything you've gotten to share with us. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody. Last chance for questions. Okay, hearing none then, again, I just want to reiterate what Aimee just said. We want to thank all of our speakers for sharing their experiences with us. It's been terrific hearing from you today. And please, if you have any questions, feel free to contact any of us on the panel, and we'll be happy to put you in touch with the information that you need. Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great rest of your day.